Hello everyone, my name is Joliee Martinez and I am co-owner of Joliee, a women's online boutique. Our mission has always been to bring you unique products at affordable prices that make you look your best, feel your best, and make a difference. We love connecting with women all around the world and we love sharing their stories. Those stories inspire us, they motivate us, and honestly, they show how strong a woman can be. We had the pleasure to sit down with Valerie, an amazing, extraordinary, powerful, strong individual, and we're so excited to share her story here on Jolie's YouTube channel. So grab your coffees, grab your wine, grab water, whatever you like, because Valerie is going to share her story and hopefully she will inspire and motivate you to be the best version of yourself.
Hey everyone, so my name is Valerie Parent, and I'm 26, and I was born and raised in Northeast Illinois, soon to be Southeast Wisconsin, and so I was raised in a family of 7 kids. I'm the middle of 7, 5 brothers and 1 sister. So I'm sure you can imagine the craziness that goes along with that, and a lot of siblings. And it was a Christian home that I grew up in. Great home, amazing family, all homeschooled from beginning to high school. And I will say that growing up it was tough. The community outside of my home was difficult, and that put a lot of things and strain on who I was. And as a kid there were a lot of circumstances that happened with friendships, circumstances that you would never want a young girl to experience from her friends, that were confusing and caused strain on me as a young girl, and I sank into depression in high school. And through that it taught me a lot of things. I kind of isolated myself from people, and that was kind of the start of my story, was junior high to high school. I started to separate myself at an early age, and then didn't open up at all. No one really knew who I was. People saw what I wanted them to see. People saw fake confidence. People saw this image that I would, or facade is a good word for it. I created this reality that I was living in that other people saw because it made me happy, and happy on the outside is what I should say. It allowed me to create something that other people would think would be desirable and would be something that people would want. And in high school, I got very hurt at one point in a journey, and I sank into a depression deeper than I ever thought was possible. And this was at 17. And my heart had been shattered, and I was alone, and I had never felt so alone in my entire life. And my family didn't know, nobody knew, and it was just tough, and I didn't know where to go, really. And then I started college, and college became this world where no one knew Valerie. I could create anything I wanted. I could create this person who was lovable and fun and desirable by anybody, and I thrived on it. I thrived on the attention, I thrived on the affection of men and who they thought I was, but really inside I was rotten and hurting, and I would go home at night and I would be alone and cry, and it was just hard. And there was no hope in my life. It was really, looking back, it was dark. It was dark. It was very dark, and no one knew anything. Not even the friends that I had. I didn't really have girlfriends. I didn't really have guy friends. They were all very surface level, fake relationships, which I'm sure a lot of us can relate to. And around 19 years old, my family decided to leave the current place of worship, the church that we were going to, and go to a different church. And I didn't want to took root. And that's where I was comfortable. And when we left, I felt like going to a new place, everybody would see the real Valerie, and they'd be able to see through the facade, I guess you could say. And so we went to this church, and for the first time ever in my life, I heard hope talk, truth. And it was hard to hear. And I sat there, and growing up in the church, you would think that a person would hear the truth about who Christ is in our lives. And I had never heard it for 19 years of my life. And at 19, I heard it, and it was an awakening in me that I had never felt. And the Spirit worked, and there was finally some glimmer of hope. And that started to open up a whole new level of who I was. And I made the decision to follow that hope and to change my life in that way. And there was difficulty in that. It was hard and being honest of things that I had gone through and things that I had experienced as a kid and things that I had done to myself as a high schooler and attempted to do to myself as a high schooler were very hard to confess to people I cared about. And it was really hard for them to hear that I had been alone through these times. And then in college, I thought I had everything back in order. It's like, I feel good, life is good, I'm accomplishing all these things, I'm going and I'm doing the things I want to do, I'm pursuing my dream. And I went to school to be, so I started with pursuing music performance because I wanted to be a professional vocalist. But I came to find out that that was not the road for me. And it was very hard and strenuous, and I decided to focus on education and teaching and being an entrepreneur and starting my own business at 19. And through that, then I got a taste of different elements of adulthood. Like I said, 19, 20 years old is when my business started to grow. And then junior year of college, I was 20 years old, so I took a year off in between school, and I went back at 20. And it was like a whole different world, the place I went. It was a small school, I was thriving, I was getting to know professors and building relationships with students, and making a name for myself of who I was, like who the real Valerie was, and just living who I was, like just honest, truthful, open book. Like I became very honest and brutally honest with everybody I knew. Sometimes too honest, but that's a different story. But it just became who I was, and it was literally like my life had done a 180. But during this time I became very unhealthy, and there was a lot of habits that just weighed me down. I was never like this fit, healthy person, or like, whatever people, the ideal woman, is. I tended to be always on the curvy side or the heavier side, and since I was a kid, like it was always a thing. Like I just never was the cookie cutter female. And senior year of college, things got really bad. I mean, because when you're in college, you're tired, you're studying, you eat crap, you eat this, you eat that. It's just like, it's a cycle. And then, in college, you drink, you have fun, you party. It's part of college. Sure, don't do it. Please. I highly suggest not to do it from personal experience. But when you get into that world, it just becomes a vicious cycle, and it just kind of swallows you up, and you lose the true meaning of life. And I was growing at one point and just thriving, and at a certain point, senior year, there was a situation that happened where, so at this point, I had kept myself pure my whole life. I was 21 at this point, or was it 21, 2015? What is it, 2018? I was 21. 21? 22. 22. Doing math here, man. And I had kept myself pure for most of my life because I was taught that was something that I was supposed to do as in the house that I grew up in, but then also in what I believed. But against my will, there was a situation that happened senior year of college that for a long time I look back on it as my fault. Because one, I put myself there. I allowed this to happen. I was the one interacting with this individual and didn't say no. Or I did say no. But it was like, those were the things that you thought in your head. Like, did I do this? Did I do this? No, I thought that was my fault. No, this is what happened, not that. This. And for the longest, for almost about a year and a half, 2 years, that's what I told myself. But I'll say that moment was probably the hardest and darkest moment of anything that I've ever experienced in my entire life. And it was hard. And I remember looking back the next morning, just being shocked and unsure of how to feel and what to think, but I had to hide it, and no one could know. No one was allowed to know. For years, I kept it a secret. And I told them that whatever happened was my fault, because it was my fault. And then, about a month and a half after that, there was another situation, but with a woman. And so there was 2 times where in my life, back to back, that these dark situations happened, and I took them upon myself and punished myself for them. And I sank back into where I was before. And I became, it was the depression hit, and weight was gained, and I didn't care about myself. I didn't care what people would think. And it was through those times where I would then almost create that facade again. And I didn't like that old Valerie. That Valerie I had disposed of, and I did not want her back. Because I loved the Valerie that I had found and the hope that I had found at 19. And I wanted that again. So, through time, and just kind of getting to a point of uneasiness, I revisited that situation back in 2015. And there is something to be said about mind, body, and spirit. And when you're not connected and those aren't balanced, if one is off, there's something to be said about how you feel about yourself, about how you want to change your life, and about the things that you'll pursue and how you affect others. So my mind wasn't balanced, my body wasn't balanced, and my spirit wasn't balanced. All of them were in different places. My spirit was hurt. My mind was broken. Actually, psychologically, trauma will literally affect the mind in ways that are so hard to overcome and take years and still are healing, and they take time. And body, and viewing yourself and knowing your body takes all 3 together. So, in the beginning of 2017, there was an encounter with the individual that everything happened with back in 2015. And it kind of brought an awakening. And it was a random encounter. Like, I ran into him at the mall. It was really weird. And it was shock and panic, and all of these memories came back, and my life started to be like, whoa, there are things that I need to fix. And then I went to my doctor a few months before that, and she gave me a list of things that were red flags. And at this point, I was 25. She goes, Valerie, you have precancerous cells. Your hormones are crazy. You're on the verge of having this fertility problem, this problem. Your weight is at this point, I was 210 pounds at the beginning of 2017. She said, you have a history of thyroid problems in your family, and if you don't get a hold of it now, it's going to get to you later. And there's a couple other smaller things. but she just listed them off. And she's like, I know that you don't want to take medication. I'm very not a medication person because anytime I put something in my body, it would create a different problem. And I had experience with that, and I didn't want to rely on something to fix me. So it wasn't really going to fix my problem. So she looked at me and she goes, you need to change your life. She goes, I know that's hard to hear, but you need to change it. And that was kind of my wake-up call. I had been alone and struggling with so many things, and I didn't know how to react to them. So I started to. I started researching, and I started to take a look at my own life. I went into counseling and seeking out help from people. I opened up about things, and I opened up about the hurts and the things that I went through, and it just released so many things. And I started to see changes little bit by little bit. In the beginning of 2017, I was determined to change the way my body felt and how my mind would see things and the ideas in my head and my spiritual life. And I did. I was determined to be in my Bible more and pray more. I was determined to seek out help for the things that I had been through and the trauma that I had experienced. And I was determined to change how I felt and how my body was. Not because, it's not that I wasn't happy with how I looked, but it's how I felt. And that's a really good point. It's not on the number and what you weigh. It's not what size clothes you can wear. It's how you feel about yourself. Because a lot of times, really, we can be in a point where we don't feel good, and on the outside we can pretend like we feel good, but we don't feel good. And we know that we need to change it. And that's what I wanted to do. And so I was determined, and I started with food. I started changing the way I ate, and I started eliminating things and eating a way that I never thought I should eat. Like, I ate like crap. So eating the way I did was totally different. And then I was introduced to essential oils by my sister-in-law, and she was like, try these. And I was like, this voodoo stuff is not gonna work. This is weird. And that was my first thought. I'm like, this stuff is weird as all can be. But she's like, no, try it. And I did. And I was like, no way did this work that fast. And it did. And I started using them regularly for different things. And I felt great. And 6 months later, I went to my doctor, and I had dropped about 30 pounds at that point. And remember, I said it's not about the number, but it's about how I was feeling better. Like, I was emotionally feeling better, psychologically I was feeling so much better. And I went from not being able to even share anything about what I had gone through to being able to open up and seek out help about it and being honest about who I was. Because that didn't define me, and that didn't mean I wasn't worth anything. And it didn't mean that I couldn't love myself and love the woman that I was becoming. And then, so I go to my doctor, and she's just like, all the tests for everything that I had came back negative. And she's like, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm taking care of myself and actually valuing who I am. And she's like, well, keep doing what you're doing because it's working and everything is going where it should be. So I did, and I stuck with it. And by the end of 2017, I had lost 50 pounds, and I felt so good. And I was in an emotional place that I had never been before, and I felt so free. And spiritually, I was just in such a good place. And the relationship with so many people had changed. So friendships, family, just all sorts of relationships changed because the view of myself had changed and who I was. And in the end of 2017, I had started a relationship with an individual because I was like, oh, I'm in such a good place. I'm ready to like get married. But no, wasn't ready. Because I still needed to learn a lesson about really standing up for myself as a woman. And I ended this relationship in the beginning of 2017 or 2018 in mid-January because I was feeling used and kind of disposed of as I did in all my other relationships. And I was like, Valerie, you're worth so much more and you deserve the world. And that's what God has promised you. And that is how Christ sees you. And that's how you need to see yourself. And I did. I stood up for myself, and that was the first time ever in any sort of situation where I put myself first. So I got to a point where I really wanted, and I was able to stand up for myself. And I told myself, Valerie, you are worth more than what this guy thinks you're worth. 10 times more on how he treats you. You deserve X, Y, and Z in your life. And you deserve it all because you have been given what Christ has given you in salvation, and that's what he wants you to have. And his Christ's love for you is more than any man's life or any man's love is worth. And the discernment and the value that you have in him, you need to see for yourself. Because until you see it for yourself, what you want is not going to happen. And so, mid-January, I did. I stood up for myself. I said, no, I'm done. I deserve, and I told the guy, I deserve so much more. You're not worth it. You're not worth the effort and any of this because you make me feel horrible inside. And you make me feel like the person that I don't want to be. And I want something. And let me tell you that it was that moment, next day, I felt so much relief. And it was like, I woke up and I was like, wow. I was like, I feel great. Like, it just felt so good. And it was like a different person. Like, it was like a Valerie. I mean, I had worked on myself the whole year of 2017. I worked on my life, worked on my health, my spiritual walk, everything. And I was like, my mind, body, spirit, and finally I felt that God had gotten me to a point where he wanted me to be, and I could really just relish in that moment. I mean, I could think back to that moment. It was just such a good day. It was a Sunday morning, because I ended things on a Saturday, and a Sunday morning I was like, I woke up like, I get to go to church today. I feel good. I was like, I don't have that problem anymore. I feel good about myself. I feel good about where the future is. And it just was great. And I went to church, and it was awesome. And I was just like, man, what took me so long to get to this point? Well, you know what? There's lessons that God was working on in my life. And it's something I don't like to call it. It's called this. I like to call it this. But it's also it's what we all know as sanctification. And it's something where we're working out our salvation. And we're working towards and working through the things that we struggle with. Because God doesn't like to see us struggle. No. I mean, he doesn't like to see the things that we go through, the pain that we suffer. He wants to see us flourish. He wants to see those good things happen, but that doesn't mean we're not going to have struggles. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to have hardship. And we work through those things. There's things that come through our life a lot. And then when we look back at those things and we see where we are now, like when I look back at everything I went through to where I'm at now, I would go through all of it again if it meant that I was going to be the woman that I am sitting here right now talking to you guys. Because if I didn't go through any of those things, I wouldn't be this Valerie. I wouldn't be me. And I don't want that because I love who I am. And I'm going to tell you guys something awesome because, when you see your value and you see how much you're worth, and you don't need to see it in other people, whether it's friendships or family relationships or significant other relationships, once you see your own worth and your value, that's all that matters. When you feel good, when your health is in order. I mean, for me, health is a huge part. I'm very holistic and I'm very natural. I don't use chemicals and toxins in my body. I eat extremely healthy and organic. And it took me a long time to get to that point. I use essential oils. A lot of people are like, that's hippie stuff. You know what? I don't care. It works, and that's all I use. And it's awesome. And I feel good. And now, in 126 days, I'm marrying my best friend. And I met him February 25th this year, which was 6 weeks after I ended that toxic, horrible relationship with a person who made me feel very empty inside. And I met him, and it was 4 days later, he looked at me and he's like, we're gonna get married. I said, we're gonna get married. And now, and I don't see my worth through his eyes. He shows me so much worth. He does. He looks at me and I see the love that he has for me, but I know the love for myself too. I don't need to have that, but I do, and it's a beautiful thing. And it shows Christ's promise in my life and the value that Christ has for me and the love that Christ has for me by giving me something to show it to me physically and in this world, to show it to me rather than just to believe it. You know, I actually get to see it. So, now I'm planning my wedding. I'm in a place where I feel good about who I am, the woman that I am, getting to share my story and love other women and to show them that life can change. And whether you come from a situation where when you were young, you were hurt and abused by people, or if you were taken advantage of by friends, or in college, if you were sexually assaulted or physically assaulted, whether it was by men or by women, or if you've experienced depression, attempted suicide, any of those things, you can look at my life and you can know that all those things happened, but now, as a woman, I can look back and like, those don't define who I am. They created and they grew me to be the strong person that I am now, that sees where Christ has brought me from those things and has given me hope and has changed my life and has allowed me to grow as a woman, but love other people, see other people's struggles, to minister to other people, to love. I love to love people. And that's where I'm at now. And I couldn't be happier with where I'm at. So, thanks for listening, everybody.
Cheers.
It's an amazing story, and I'm so happy you shared it. I'm so happy Joliee connected with you.
Yeah, so
And that's a God thing.
it is. He is working. Because I was telling them we need to let God take his course with Joliee.
Because
And like he is putting things in order.
that was great. That was so great.